So today we're going to talk about the nature and the power of the human brain. And I was telling a friend of mine that if uh, if you can lecture on the human brain for 30 minutes, you probably understand the human brain uh, well enough. So today we're going to talk about. But if you're going to talk and lecture about the human brain for 30 minutes, you probably don't understand the brain or your brain well enough, and therefore this is going to be a huge disadvantage in life, in business. So in this live stream, I'd like to explore further um, this idea of the human brain, and hopefully we can better understand our brain, and also what is the mind. We have a lot of expressions that that relate to the mind, but do we really understand what the mind is? And so I think we have to start with the biological brain, because it's easier to study and understand and appreciate. So let me start this live stream, and it's going to be totally spontaneous. So it's going to be a lot of fun as we explore together the power of the human brain and the nature of the human brain. And who knows, if I'm not able to talk about the human brain in a way that is intelligent and informative, then it means I don't understand my own brain, and therefore I should do more research. So and by the way, as you know, large language models today are based on the human brain, on neural networks, and that's how ChatGPT works, and that's how deep learning works. So that's proof positive that the human brain is a very powerful model for designing and developing intelligence. So we're going to explore today the nature of the brain, how it evolved over millions of years, and also the power of the human brain. And I'll talk about my discovery in the early 1990s. I discovered Dr. Edward de Bono's books, and I read all of his about 30 books. How he taught me about creativity and how to use my right brain. He never really mentions the right brain, I don't think so, but creativity is mostly inside of the right brain. We're going to talk about his technique of lateral thinking. We're going to talk about the precuneus, the caudate nucleus. We're going to talk about the visual cortex. We're going to talk about something I learned. It's a framework I call SPAR, from the book Prediction Machines. It's a book on artificial intelligence. And we're going to talk also about other books on AI. Like one seminal book is The Master Algorithm by Professor Pedro Domingos. And you can watch his lectures on that book on YouTube for free. We're going to talk about how I developed my own brain, how I became the valedictorian of my high school. Doesn't mean I'm more intelligent, but probably my IQ is above average, which is about 100, but my IQ is probably anywhere from 100 130 to 150. This is not my actual IQ score. Google says that on average high school valedictorians, they score between 130 and 150. I don't know, I might be less than that, I might be more, but it's not that important. Academic success really testifies to how a student is able to follow the rules and perform well on exams, and that's it. It's not a reflection of how smart he is in business or in life or in social situations. But definitely I'm gonna share with you, the techniques I developed in high school and college and universities that enabled me to perform exceptionally well um, when it comes to studying. Snapshot is a memorization technique I developed. NQM for neural quality management, I developed that. Chunking I learned from books. Highlighting using a pencil, and also what is it? Yeah, of course, flashcards. I didn't use flashcards that much when I was in high school or college or university. What else? Oh, yeah, mind mapping, which I learned from the book. What is it? I forgot the name of the book, but it's by Tony Buzan. I highly recommend his book. He was my first introduction into how to use mind maps. And yeah, we're going to talk about, of course, large language models. And so all of these topics are related to the brain. And so, if you're able to talk about these topics or other topics that are related to the brain, then chances are you know how to use your brain correctly, and as a result, you're probably going to succeed in life, because life depends on how you masterfully use your brain, and also how you guard against the weaknesses of your brain. And this is what the late Charlie Munger, he calls cognitive biases. These are things that you perceive, but your reasoning about these things, you're misled by what you see. You're misled by people who present facts and information in a certain way, so that you reach certain conclusions, but those are wrong conclusions. So I'm going to have to Google Charlie Munger, but he talked about, I think, 22 biases that you have to guard against. And biases means that your brain is reaching conclusions, but it's the wrong conclusions, but you're naturally driven to reach those conclusions. Let me just save this document to make sure, because often my software has crashed, so let me just save it. I think that if you're a parent or a teacher, you're going to enjoy this spontaneous live stream, where I'm going to share with you absolutely everything that I know, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that we all know that success and even spirituality, health, like everything in our lives, depends on our brain, because the brain decides everything. So speaking of decision, I would be remiss if I didn't mention The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. So just as a matter of disclosure, I've read over 1,000 non-fiction books. So I don't read a lot of fiction, like maybe Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, but that's it, or Agatha Christie's crime novels, but that's it. So from these books, I've probably read like maybe 5 or 10 psychology books, but a lot of books on business, marketing, futurism, technology, etc. So I have a fairly well-rounded education. Books on spirituality also. So I'm going to share with you everything that I've learned from these books as far as they relate to the brain. But I think that you would agree that the brain is the source of wealth, source of power, source of wisdom. And this is what I was telling a friend of mine. I introduced him to two very powerful sources of information. One is a source of information. The other one is a financial innovation. You might have heard of it. It's called Bitcoin. And I was telling him, initially it was a half joke, but I was telling him that I'm going to introduce him to the third B, which stands for the human brain. And I was telling him that, and he's a successful investor, I was telling him that the human brain is misunderstood. It's not even well understood. We think that we understand the mind, and yet the mind is not very well defined. Nobody defines the mind. But the brain, we don't have to define the brain. Like, it's actually a physical object, the physical organ. But it's not the physical features of the brain only. It's also how it works and in what situation. For example, people have tried to dissect Einstein's brain, but as far as I know, they didn't learn too much from Einstein's brain. It's how he used his brain. So it's really interesting. It's like it depends on how his mind used his brain. So, the mind is, we can say that it's separate from the brain. I don't know exactly what the relationship, but it's probably not the same. There might be an overlap. But you see, like, even if you dissect physically, physiologically, chemically Einstein's brain, you wouldn't know how his brain actually worked, because a dead brain is like a computer that doesn't have electricity flowing through it. You just don't know how it works, so it's about training your brain, because when you're born, your baby, and parents know this, they have to train the brain of children. And initially, like, parents have to force children, and therefore they impose non-freedom, or what they call a forcing function. They force students and young people to go to school and to do their homework. It's a forcing function, right? And I think most parents and teachers believe that their forcing function is good. But as we've seen from geniuses like Elon Musk and Albert Einstein and Bill Gates, who dropped out of high school, the educational system might not have the right forcing function. I mean, their forcing function, they're forcing kids to study mathematics, languages, history. It might be better than leaving the child, let's say, in the jungle, where it's like Tarzan, right? Can't even speak English, can't write. So the forcing function of the educational system, which is based on the Prussian military system, where the Prussian system was created to manufacture or to mass produce employees, which is not bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad. So, high school and colleges will produce employees who have a certain work ethic, and they can function as human resources, but it's not the best forcing function. So I'm going to mention later on about my forcing function instructional design I call Octagon, where I'm training my mind by submitting it to training that is similar to the training and the coaching that UFC fighters, that's Ultimate Fighting Championship, they also call the mixed martial arts fighters, and they're training because when they get into the octagon, they're facing an opponent, and they have to submit the opponent. So that's the kind of training I want to submit my brain to, not just going to the gym, but really train my brain in order to fight in the world of business, which is very savage. So anyways, the forcing function that we call the educational system is good. It's better than leaving your kids in the jungle, but there are better forcing functions, right? So we're gonna take a look at how to design better forcing functions. I know it sounds a little bit abstract for now, but I promise you I'm gonna get into the detail later on. But I think that we all agree that your brain is the most powerful and the most profitable asset that you have. So the question is, why have you never followed a course in high school, which is the best place? Elementary school might be too early for your kids or for ourselves when we were kids, but high school is a good place. So the big question is, why isn't there a course, something like how to use your brain for maximum impact? Like how to use a brain to learn faster, to learn more, to memorize more, to succeed in business, to find a job. Like, it's amazing that college graduates and university graduates can't find a job. I mean, these are the elite of society, right? The 1% who go to university and they can't even find a job, which is crazy. Like in the 1990s, I was a university dropout and I was able to find a job. It's not difficult, but I had a trick. In the same way that as a valedictorian of my high school, I had tricks. It's just that people don't have these tricks, and so they go out there in the job market and they do what they see other people do, like it's what I call the monkey see, monkey do. They're not very creative, like to find a job, they would, browse through websites which contain only 20% of jobs. By the way, 80% of jobs are hidden. So 20% of jobs are announced publicly. And so they send their resume and then they wait for the employer to reply. They wait for a reply and they get to the job interview and then they perform and they get a job offer. But if we use a first principles approach, and I'm going to talk more about that and Elon Musk's algorithm for efficiency, instead of going through all of that, why not just do the work? Whether you're a search engine optimization professional, whether you're a website programmer, you're a copywriter, whatever it is that you love to do, why don't you just do the work using fictitious data if you have to, but do the work for a particular company without getting paid, and then send them your work samples in addition to your resume? Why not do that? And then they will see right away that you're qualified to do the job, so you can just do the job. This idea came to me because I had a management professor, a very good one, probably the best one, at McGill. She was a turnaround CEO. She was a Jewish woman who would buy struggling companies, and she would come in as an investor and CEO, and she would turn around the company towards profitability. So she was a very dynamic woman. So when I had a course with her, I decided to take all the courses that she was teaching. I did, sales management, retail management, I took, and I learned quite a bit. And so, she shared a story one day. There was a guy, he happens to be Vietnamese like me, and the guy approached her, but he didn't send his resume or anything. He just said, Mrs. Galeen, I'm willing to work for you for 1 week for free, and if you like my work, you can hire me. But if you don't like my work, I'll just walk away, no hard feelings. And she absolutely loved that idea. Here's a young guy in front of her who's willing to work for free for 1 week. He's willing to invest 1 week of hard work, so that she can actually see what he's capable of. And so she was so impressed by that, and she hired him on the spot, and so that's what I mean. Like, people today, even after they go to college and university, and their professors had 3 years to teach them, about this single line, just do the work, and the professors failed to teach them. I call it failure, and it's really failure, because a teacher who's not preparing you for the ultimate aim of a university education is to get a job. You don't go through 3 years of university training just to sit at home and send resumes. It's completely stupid. So can you see how, I'm not saying that the professors are stupid, but they're so impractical. Like, there's not a single professor who's teaching students about how to actually compete in the real world, and these are professors. It's not forgivable, but there were 2 professors at Concordia who actually created a course called self-marketing, and they use marketing principles to teach students how they can package themselves into a product, with a certain price. This is a salary, and how they can promote themselves, and how they can choose the right method or distribution method for delivering their services. So at least there was 2 professors that I know at Concordia University in Montreal who created a course called self-marketing. But I'm not very impressed with university professors. They're very, very theoretical. They fill your brain with so much information that it's so useless. I went to McGill University, and like I said, Sharon Galeen is the only one who has been useful to me. I paid $17,000, and McGill didn't do anything to improve the way that my brain works. I actually had to do my own research, learning from Charlie Munger, learning from Tony Buzan, learning from Edward de Bono, learning from Peter Drucker. I had to build my own brain. McGill University, which is known as the Harvard of Canada, couldn't do it. None of the professors I've had since elementary school, high school, college, and university, none of them taught me how to use my brain. So can you see, if you're a parent, you should be concerned, and you should actually hire me as a coach. But can you see how the entire university system, the entire educational system, from elementary school all the way to high school to university, they're not teaching your kids about the nature of his brain, the power of his brain. This is something I've had to learn by myself outside of academic institutions. And I was a valedictorian of my high school. I was on the dean's list when I was at Dawson College studying in the pure and applied science. And at McGill I studied biology and management. I had an A in almost every course in the Faculty of Management. So I'm a pretty smart cookie, but they didn't teach me how to use my brain. I had to do my own research. I want to mention also, before I forget, this book, which costs more than $100 US. It's called the Cambridge Handbook of Expertise and Expert Performance. If you are a parent, you should really spend $100 to get this handbook for your kids, and you can learn also. It teaches people how to become smart, and it has the best research papers on this subject. How do you become an expert, like piano players or chess players or poker players, or how do you become an expert in your field? Most people who are professionals, and I would say the 1 billion LinkedIn users, they are experiencing, I'm sorry if it sounds a little bit offensive, I don't mean it to, but they are experiencing what I call arrested development. They reach a certain plateau of skills, and they're stuck at that plateau. And it's obvious that they're stuck because their salary is frozen, right? Like maybe every year the employer is going to increase their salary by maybe 5% or 7% to keep up with inflation. But that's it. If your salary is not increasing every month or every year, it means that you're experiencing arrested development. You're not producing more value, and that's why the employer does not pay you more money. And so the reason why, I learned that from Anders Ericsson, the editor of this book, the late Anders Ericsson. Unfortunately, he passed away. You're experiencing arrested development in your job, in your career, or even in your marriage or in your parenting or whatever you're doing, because you don't know the principles and the techniques to keep improving yourself until you become an expert and you can perform expertly. And it's the same with calligraphy, it's the same with chess. I play chess online and I'm stuck at an ELO rating of 1400. Often I go back to 1300 because I don't have a coach. So I can keep playing chess, and I've played thousands of games, but I'm stuck at this level, whereas grandmasters are at this 2500. The grandmasters have become grandmasters because they have coaches who review their games and they keep getting better and better. So in the same way, maybe chess is not that important, but in the same way, look at your brain. Your brain functions at a certain level, but you can't improve the way that your brain functions because you have arrested development. You're stuck at a certain plateau, at a certain level. So, for example, if your reading speed is a certain number of words per minute, and you're not increasing your reading speed, it means you have arrested development, and you should probably read a book or watch or buy a video course on how to do speed reading. Speed reading is not, it's a special technique. You have to train yourself. You don't have to flip through the pages. You have to move your fingers down the page at a certain pace so that you force your brain to absorb the information faster. Most people don't do that. Most people, like when they read a novel or a nonfiction book, they read at a certain speed and they assume that this is the best speed or the fastest that they can go, but that's not true. You have people, geniuses, like Oscar Wilde, who could read a book in 10 minutes. People also like Noam Chomsky, who can be at the supermarket and he can pick up a book and he's done with it in 10 minutes, which is amazing. And obviously these guys, Elon Musk, also Jordan Peterson, they learned to read when they were kids, and they're so familiar with the ideas and the way they move their eyes across the page that they can read a book in 10 minutes. You might think that it's not possible, but it is possible. It's just a matter of training. But in the case of Noam Chomsky, I'm guessing that he can read the first sentence of a chapter and he can decide right away, okay, this chapter I know it already, or it doesn't have anything useful. So it's not that Noam Chomsky is reading word by word. He can recognize an idea and he can decide, okay, I know this already, or it's not a very useful idea, I'm skipping to the next chapter. So it's not necessarily speed reading. There's speed reading, but there's also like what I call skip reading. You can skip a paragraph. In my case, like, I skip books as well. Like, a lot of times people would recommend a book, I go to the bookstore, I flip through a few pages and I skip reading that book. Why would I read a book that that I conclude is not very useful? There are so many books being published today, but most of it is junk. So I'm going to give you later on a list of the seminal books that you should be reading, probably 20 books that will really train your brain. And these are 20 books that if you don't read these 20 books, or if you don't recommend these 20 books to your kids, they're going to be behind the kids who are reading and studying these books. So Edward de Bono definitely is one author you should read. Maybe you don't have to read all his 3 books like I did. I'm a kind of like a obsessive person, but I'm going to recommend 5 books by Edward de Bono, and if you don't read those 5, you're going to be behind other people in the population. Consider this: in America, in the United States, and Canada is probably the same, the average American reads one non-fiction book per year. The average chief executive officer reads like 50 or 60 books. So that's about 1 book per week. Can you see the correlation between success and the number of books you're reading? Today, people are going on YouTube to learn, but it's so not the right way to learn. There are some topics, like software programming. Yeah, it's probably better to learn from a YouTube tutorial. But there are so many YouTube videos on how to become rich, how to make more money, and you cannot learn that from YouTube. First of all, the videos on YouTube are free. Think about this for a minute. If the YouTuber really believed that he could sell his YouTube videos, do you think that he would give it away for free? No. So he's giving it away for free because nobody would pay for it. So if nobody would pay for a YouTube video, including videos on how to become rich and a millionaire, there's tons of video by Natalie Dawson and all these gurus, you're just wasting your time. Instead, you go to a library, you pick up a book on e-commerce, on drop shipping, etc. You pick up a book by Warren Buffett if you want to learn investing, and the book costs like $30, but you read it for free at the library. So when you read a book, you know that you're reading something that somebody took like a year or more to summarize into a book. But when you read something online, Jesus, what can you expect when you read something for free? Why would you submit? Why would you feed your brain with information that has low value? So let me just put it here: YouTube equals low or zero value. Like, you see videos of Natalie Dawson. She's probably one of the best video YouTuber, but the production value is great. Her clothing, her style, her delivery, everything's perfect, but the value of her knowledge is near zero. She's not teaching anything. Let me repeat that. She's not teaching anything, and yet she has like close to 700 subscribers, and these subscribers are not learning much from her. Now, in her defense, maybe she doesn't want to be a teacher. Maybe she just wants to inspire people, and on that score, I find her videos very inspiring. But you see, like, let me teach you something. There's inspiration, and that's the first stage, but the second stage is education. You cannot get an education from Natalie Dawson. You can't. She's not a teacher. She's not giving any frameworks that you can use to filter information, to filter and decide which information is valuable. Education is what I used to do at Taft College, where for 15 weeks I would teach students 3 hours a week on email marketing, project management, or marketing research. That's education. What you find online is just inspiration. But after you're inspired by Natalie Dawson, where do you find the education? You find the education at your local library, where the books took a lot of time and effort and money to create, and the books that you find at the library, they all cost something, and therefore you can pick any book on business, you can pick any book on marketing and sales, you're going to get something of value. So that's the second stage, education. But books are not enough. You have to go to the third stage, where you're getting training from a teacher or a coach who's going to give you tests, and you have to test yourself, because training is about acquiring skills. And then you have the fourth stage, where you implement in the real world, and the last stage, second last stage is coaching. Somebody is going to help you to correct your mistake, etc. And finally, you have support so that you can optimize your results all the time. So you can see that you have 5 stages that I used to for all of my workshops and courses, but YouTube gives you only the first stage. And the first stage, inspiration, it might be important, but for me it's not important. I've been inspired and super motivated ever since I was a kid. So if you need inspiration, if you're currently thinking like a loser, you don't have a lot of ambition, you're not very serious about your life, your career, your business, your dating, your woman, if you're not really a serious person, you're lazy, you don't have the right qualities, then watch Natalie Dawson. She's going to inspire you, like she inspires me, right? Even though I'm super motivated already, my aim is to become a billionaire by the end of 2026, so I have to be super motivated. But for most people, they need to see her video to get inspiration, but don't stop there. Watch her videos, and then get into a local library and learn what you need to learn. Move your body, move yourself into a library, and shut your phone, and just no TV, no fridge, no nothing. You're at the local library. And this is what I did for years. I've read over 1,000 business books. So anyways, this is a sequence if you want to become super smart. And speaking of super smart, I'm going to create a membership site that I call Super Smart, and it's going to charge people only $100 a month, and people can join in order to become super smart. And I'm going to invite successful people to contribute their content. But $100 a month is not a lot of money, but it's only for people who are serious, because once you become super smart, you can use your brain like a supercomputer, and you can make so much money. And that's why like $100 a month is really nothing. So anyways, you can see that I've been talking about the brain and about intelligence for 33 minutes. So I've passed my own test, and I can go on, but this is just to show you that unless you can talk about knowledge, the brain, the mind, books that you've read, what you've learned from those books, etc., you don't really know how your brain works. And because you don't know how your brain works, it's very unlikely that you're using your brain correctly. And therefore, if you're not using your brain correctly, and your brain is the most powerful tool that you have, there's nothing that you can do of value without your brain, right? If you don't understand your brain, and you don't understand how to make it faster, how to make it better, and how to deploy it, then that's why you have a job. So I know it sounds crazy for me to say this. I'm going to offend a few people, that's for sure. But let me start with a provocative statement, because remember, Claude Shannon, the father of information theory, you should read up on it, very interesting. He said that information is surprise. So if what I'm going to tell you surprises you, or even insults you and offends you, it could mean that it's good information. If you come across information that doesn't surprise you, like what we read or watch on CNN or Fox News, it doesn't surprise me at all what's going on in the world. The Ukraine war, the China versus US, that's history repeating itself. Information that is valuable is information that surprises you. You go, whoa, what the hell is this? You're surprised, and therefore it's information that you could not predict, that is not in your environment, right? It's so new. So let me give you a new piece of information that might be valuable to you. If you have a job, it means you're not using your brain properly. So please don't be offended. I'm going to explain, okay? I'm not saying that you're stupid or anything. I'm just saying that your brain is a supercomputer. You can use your brain to create value, to create products and sell those products online. But you're not. It means you're not using your brain properly. Specifically, you're not using your right brain. You're using your left brain, obviously, to analyze, to process information, using your left brain to write reports. But you're not using your right brain. Your right brain is where your creativity is located, where your imagination is located. So you're not using your whole brain, if you will. You're not using your whole brain. So maybe properly is a little bit too insulting. I'm going to backtrack. You're not using your whole brain. And the reason why you're not using your whole brain is that nobody taught you how to use your brain. Have you ever come across a book titled The Human Brain's User Manual? Like, if you compare your computer or laptop with your brain, wouldn't you agree that your brain is 1,000 times at least more sophisticated than your computer? And yet every computer comes with a user manual, and like the operating system, Windows, you have to learn how to use it, right? All the apps on your PC, you have to learn how to use it. Your smartphone, etc. There is a user manual for that. But your brain, the most powerful asset that you have, the contributor to your wealth, the creator of your fortune. Let's put it down. Your brain equals the creator of your fortune, if you use it properly. And yet people can't even lecture for 30 minutes on their brain, how it works, what it can do, what it cannot do. I mean, there's only one person, as far as I'm concerned, who really uses his brain expertly. So a lot of people think that Elon Musk is a genius. No, I would say that he's just a guy who knows intimately how to use and leverage his brain. And of course, he uses his brain to make a lot of calculations. So he determined that it's a good bet to support Donald Trump. It's a good bet to buy Twitter even at a loss. It's a good bet to start SpaceX and Tesla, even though everyone was laughing at him. But he's not laughing at himself. He knows his own brain. He knows that with his brain he can do it, and therefore he just went ahead and do it. That's why people say never bet against Elon. But people think that he's a genius. But no, if you think that Elon Musk is a genius, you're devaluing your brain. Of course, he is in a way superior intellectually to most people, but he's only superior to you and to me because we don't know how to use our brain, but somehow he learned how to use his brain expertly, and that's how he can run multiple companies like SpaceX, Tesla, The Boring Company, and now he's working in the White House. He knows how to use his brain. Like, he can think much faster than you can. He can reach conclusions much faster. He can solve problems much faster. And it's just how he uses his brain. That's it. And so don't think that other people are smarter than you. They might be, but don't assume that. Instead, just tell yourself, look, I don't know how to use my brain, and I'm willing to learn how to use my brain with Peter's help, but I'm not the only one. You can learn from other people. Like I said, other authors that I've learned from, Charlie Munger, Albert Einstein. I've read like 1,000 books, and for some reason I have the talent of being able to memorize everything that I've learned. That is really important. For example, one line from Einstein is, he said that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Now, that statement alone, to me, it's worth more than his theory of relativity. Well, first of all, because I don't know how to apply that. But what Albert Einstein was saying, that what he doesn't understand about the universe is that you can actually understand it. And so it's the same thing with the human brain. It's the same thing with Elon Musk. We can understand the brain of Elon Musk if we begin to study it, if we begin to analyze every public statement that he has made. And I went even further. I read the book, which I gave to my 17-year-old nephew because, he wants to become an engineer. And the book is called The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. And the book describes a certain approach to science, which is very powerful. And while I was reading the book, it occurred to me that that's exactly how Elon Musk is thinking. Now, I don't know if Elon Musk has ever met David Deutsch, but that's exactly how the mind of Elon Musk is thinking. Like he for him, it's like infinity. Like his brain can go anywhere. Like he doesn't stop himself from thinking of new ideas and testing them and realizing, feats of engineering. He just doesn't stop because it's infinity. But compare that to most people who have a job and they stop learning. And that's why they experience what I call arrested development. There's no arrested development with Elon Musk. He's going to keep creating more and more companies and products. He doesn't stop, but most people, unfortunately, they stop at a certain point. Oh, I have a job. I work 40 hours a week. I go home. I enjoy life with my wife and kids, and I enjoy Netflix, and that's it. People are experiencing arrested development. They stop growing. After they graduate from university, they stop reading books. This is not my opinion. Studies have shown that people don't read books after they go to university. Maybe because, teachers force them to read books that they didn't find interesting, and therefore people develop an aversion to books. But that's a problem. You should read books that you enjoy, and you should read books and not just watch YouTube videos. Someone who is watching YouTube videos and watching TikTok videos, which is worse, that person doesn't have a brain. Okay, I'm sorry, but if you need TikTok videos by influencers to stimulate your brain, you don't have a brain. You're a zombie. So I know it sounds insulting, but if you have TikTok on your phone, to me, like, your low IQ. Becoming smart is to understand how your brain works. Read the books that I recommend to you. The Beginning of Infinity. You can read a summary online if you will, but read. Stop watching videos. Stop scrolling on YouTube or Facebook. YouTube, not too bad. Sometimes I learn from a lot of smart YouTubers like Veritasium. But Facebook and TikTok, you are wasting your life away, and this is something that is unforgivable because your life is limited, right? So you want to use your brain in a way that is very smart so that you can achieve everything that you were meant to achieve. Like when I was a teenager, I achieved so much, and there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. I became a chess champion, number 2 in the province of Quebec at age 16. I won an art contest. I won 2 literary awards at age 17 and 18. I was on stage as a valedictorian. I mean, I did so many things, but I was coming up with ideas, and I have to use my left brain to analyze and reach conclusions. A lot of people, entrepreneurs, are very passionate to use their right brain. Oh, I'll do it because I can do it, but they don't use their left brain to write a business plan and analyze and process information and make decisions. So they're using just half their brain. Entrepreneurs are typically using only the right brain, and employees are using only the left brain. But you got to reserve. This is very interesting. They always reserve the best brain surgeon at a nearby hospital. Okay, why? The best brain surgeon at a nearby hospital close to the U.S. president. Why? Because the American president is shot. Usually they're shot in the head, right? And so that's just an interesting story from a friend of mine who has an insider FBI connection. So anyways, there's so much that I want to teach you regarding the brain, and this training on the brain is going to be useful to teachers who can use your brain to improve your brain. It sounds funny, but right, use your brain to improve your brain. It's like you're using your brain to perform surgery on your brain. physically it's not possible. Like, for example, a surgeon cannot operate on himself, but you can actually use your brain to improve your brain. And there are many ways to do that, but one way, and again, it comes from Albert Einstein. He said, a lot of great people throughout history, they just summarize their genius in one sentence. That's how he became a genius. Ayn Rand, the famous author of Atlas Shrugged, and she's a philosopher. I was reading her journal, and in the margin she would often write something like this. She write, "Think this through." So she would that proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that what I'm thinking is the right thinking. So you see, all these smart people,